The reason why the world is disunited and lays in broken heaps is because man is disunited within himself. Ralph Waldo Emerson. So many times we look outside of ourselves and we want to change circumstances. We want to change the world, make it a better place. We maybe vote for a different politician or march for another cause. But it is my conviction that if each one of us takes responsibility for being the strongest version of ourselves, we can't help but empower the entire world. I like to use the analogy of a light bulb. If that switch is flipped and that bulb is turned on, all that bulb has to do is be, and the entire room is illuminated. When you flip your switch, when you're turned on, when you're illuminated, you can't help but to illuminate the world around you. You see this so often when someone begins to be a stronger version of themselves that their friends and family who maybe are used to the darkness begin to reject or begin to pull away. But by and by, as you continue to hold your light, those who are attracted to the light begin to move closer to you, and you find that the world around you seems to be getting a bit brighter. When man is united within himself, the world becomes united. It is my conviction that we are moving into a brand new world. There is a new day, a new dawn that's upon us. And this video is an educational video and a call to action to all men who are ready to be the strongest version of themselves. Light up and illuminate this world. The only way that's going to happen is when we begin to integrate those lost parts of who we are, those things that have been cast into the shadow based on the conditioning that we've received since we were children. All those things that we were taught shouldn't be looked at, shouldn't be considered, are the very things that hold the power that allow us to be our strongest selves. And I know this is true because we watch so many shadow men living in their shallow lives that do not represent the greatness that is naturally, inherently their right, your right. And if you've been watching my videos long enough, you know that I truly believe that our bodies hold the key to the strongest version of ourselves. But you've also heard me say that the body is the mind, so the mind is not a separate thing from the body. As our bodies become more integrated, our minds become more integrated. As we become the strongest version of ourselves on the outside, we have more resources to support our inner development. In this video, I'd like to talk about two very prominent psychoanalysts from the early 20th century, both of which were students of Sigmund Freud. One, Wilhelm Reich, the other, Carl Jung. Wilhelm Reich was all about healing people, making them their strongest selves, not through talk therapy, but through breathing and movement. He found that people who breathed deep and allowed the chi, life force, energy, or what he called orgone, to move freely through their body, they expressed themselves in their most grounded and powerful ways. Rather than speaking to people about the things that are haunting them and their dark shadows, he simply worked to resolve the blocks that weren't allowing them to breathe deeply and allow the energy, the inherent spontaneity and expressive capacity in the individual to shine brightly. When we can get out of our own physical way, we shine that much more bright. Carl Jung was also on the other end of the spectrum, but in my mind, they worked together like a yin and yang, like a day and night. Carl Jung was very spiritual in his assessment of individuals. Carl Jung is the one that has brought us all of the archetypes that allow us to have things like personality profiles. We're all thinkers, feelers, beers, and doers. If you've studied Briggs-Myers, you've heard these things. That's just a small fraction of what Carl Jung brought to us. He also shared the idea that each man has a quadrated psyche. There are four parts, four major parts to us, where we get thinking, being, feeling, and doing. And one of his students, Robert Moore, who was very involved in the men's movement, described each one of those parts within a man as a king, warrior, magician, and lover. In this video, I want to show you how to be your strongest physical self deep breathing, movement, and bioenergetics, and use that to fuel your spiritual power in being your most integrated, coherent, and cohesive king, warrior, magician, and lover. The body is the mind, and the mind is the body. When we're talking about the work of Wilhelm Reich in bioenergetics, we're really talking about how the body dictates how we behave in the world. You know that if you're not breathing into your belly and you're anxious and you're nervous and your shoulders are hiked up and you're shaking, that you're going to be on edge. You're not going to be relaxed and available and receptive. You're kind of up. You also know that when you're chilling, you're relaxing, and you're passive and you're receptive, that you got a totally different type of experience in your life. This is what I call being tender aggressive. Your ability to be powerful enough to have that energy that you need to get out there and do the things that you do without it ruling you in anxiety, but also allowing yourself to relax and to be grounded and to be rooted in your sexuality. Breathing into your balls, I like to say, but without it taking you so down into depression. Those two swings of the polarities, anxiety from being too much on the surface, having too much uncontrolled, chaotic energy, describes one type of man. The other end of the spectrum, some of us have a predisposition towards, which is where the energy seems to recede in. And we just don't have the amount of energy that we think we should have in order to attack the world that we want in the way that we want to. And oftentimes leads to depression. Depression is very much a depression of the energy in the body. It just sinks and recedes. I like to describe that man as the cowardly. Those two extremes are what's ruling us energetically from the underworld. We're either too anxious, ungrounded, or too depressed, sad, and drained. You might recognize that you may have a predominance towards one or the other. Some of us are so much on the surface, and some of us are very much laid back. Being the strongest version of ourselves is not just a body phenomenon as it relates to the work of Wilhelm Reich and whether or not we show up as a hot-blooded chaotic type or a low-charge cowardly type, but also shows up in the psyche, the work of Carl Jung, and how we either show up as a integrated and fully empowered king, warrior, magician, or lover, you can see them around me there, or we show up as shadow versions or lesser versions of each one of those quadrated parts of our psyche. Being our strongest selves is about modulating our energy and removing the blocks that don't allow us to be tender and aggressive, meaning not so hot but not so cold, just cool and grounded enough. And also how we show up in our king psyche aspect, our sovereign aspect, the part of ourselves that has clarity of vision and direction. Also our warrior qualities, that part of us that has discipline and devotion, that lover part of ourselves that's associated first with self-love and then opening up to compassion and being able to share our love with others. And then our magician quality, which has to do with tapping into the power of our intuition. Now, the rest of this video is a bit of an assessment to allow you to decide where the imbalance lies for you so that you can take action to integrate both your energetic aspect or your physical aspect and your psyche aspect, your four parts or your quadrated psyche. Becoming the strongest version of ourselves is about tender aggression, being in between here, and then reaching the fullness of each one of our archetypes. So first, you may at this point have an idea of whether or not you tend to be the hot-blooded, energy on the surface, chaotic type person. Or you happen to be the low charge, low energy, depressive, cowardly type person. Now, it's not about right or wrong. It's about getting a better objective view on who we are so that we can take action to support ourselves through the energetic means, breathing, movement, exercise, meditations, and things of that sort. Once you've got a grasp on that, then we can move on to how the shadow aspects of our king, warrior, magician, or lover may be showing up in our lives. Working from the psyche first rather than dealing with the energetic aspect leaves us ungrounded. There are so many that can tell you so much about what's going on in their heads, but yet they can't manifest the damn thing. That's because we've got to work it into the body. We've got to combine the work of Reich and Jung. We've got to combine the work that we do in our bodies with our minds. So once we begin working to resolve the blocks and that which don't allow us to move with complete groundedness and tender aggression, we can then start asking ourselves how we show up in each of these 4 quadrants. If you tend towards the chaotic type energy, you may find that you have a great clarity of vision. You know exactly what you want in your life. You know how to get there, but there seems to be something that is blocking you. You can't seem to get there no matter how hard you work. You've got that clear vision, but the work just seems like it's fruitless. You're busting your ass. Everything that you do every single day yields very little results. The other thing that you may notice is that when it comes to the magician quality, the intuition tends to be a bit lacking. We are more outward focused, meaning you much more prone to looking at results or looking at people's reactions or asking people what you should do or really using the world as a reflection for our own ego rather than looking within and trusting ourselves. The magician quality in the chaotic type is usually very diminished. Either we can't hear our intuition or we don't trust it. And as it relates to self-care and the lover aspect of things, we tend to be very anxious and ungrounded. If you find that when things aren't going your way or you're upset about something or you're really excited to get going with something, anxiety lets you know that balance needs to be restored. When it comes to our depressive states, that part of us that seems to sink in, or those of us who have a predominance towards being low charge or cowardly. You may even find that you don't have vision at all. You don't know what you like. You don't know what you want to do in life. You realize that it's good to have goals. You've heard that having a vision and a mission is a good idea, but you don't know what it is and you don't even know how to get it. And everything that comes across your plate, comes across your face, you're never excited enough to go after. The thing with the warrior side of things in this type of individual is that there's not enough motivation to go after those things, even if they do spark an interest within you. You know you like it, you're ready to do it, you commit, and then the commitment fails. This is because there's just not enough energy being pulled up from your core. There's just not enough energy in the surface of the body to go out there, be motivated, and get that thing done. So where our friend on this side works his face off and gets nowhere because there's an imbalance there, our friend here, it just seems he can't get off the couch. And when that happens to be the case, the magician quality manifests itself not in heightened intuition, but in a self-loathing, a sort of turning in on ourselves, but not so that we can hear our hearts, but more so that we can beat ourselves up. Oh, I wish I was different. I wish I was a different way. I want to be more like that guy. That's what happens on this side of the spectrum. And then when it comes to the lover or self-care or how the sensations in our body let us know where we are, when we are in that depressive state, or if we lean towards depression, we feel depression. The energy is depressed. So in this video, I hope to share some insights as to where you lay on this spectrum between being chaotic or cowardly. It's not about right or wrong, and sometimes we swing from back and forth. You might want to know where you are today, but you also want to know what your predominance is. Where do you tend to lean? Also in this video, I've hoped to give you a bit of an insight as to how each one of our powerful archetypes, our powerful masculine archetypes of king, warrior, magician, and lover may be showing up in shadow forms rather than in their fullness by how we react to the circumstances in our lives, whether or not we can get going but can't get nothing done, or whether or not we have no energy to take action in the things that we really think we ought to. Now that we've got a bit of an idea of where we are, we got to focus on where we're going. And it's about being the most integrated and grounded man that we've come here to be. If you're a man wanting to be the strongest version of yourself, then follow me in this conversation by clicking the link down below and watching the second video in this series, where we talk about being the most grounded and integrated man that we've come here to be. Done.